Russia-Ukraine war latest, what we know on day 210 of the invasion. Putin threatens use of nuclear weapons as he announces partial mobilization in Russia. World leaders condemn intention by Moscow-held regions of Ukraine to vote on annexation by Russia.
Extinguishing Ukraine's right to exist as a state, plain and simple, and Ukraine's right to exist as a people. Whoever you are, wherever you live, whatever you believe, that should make your blood run cold.
Thousands of innocent people and pushed millions of Ukrainians to flee their homes. This war is not just an attack on our neighbor and friend, Ukraine. It is an attack on the rules-based international order. It is an attack on nuclear safety. It is an attack on food supplies to countries in the Middle East and Africa.
Vladimir Putin has announced a partial mobilization in Russia in a significant escalation that places the country's people and economy on a wartime footing. The president also threatened nuclear retaliation, saying that Russia had lots of weapons to reply to what he called Western threats on Russian territory, and added that he was not bluffing. In a highly anticipated televised address, Putin said the partial mobilization was a direct response to the dangers posed by the West, which wants to destroy our country, and claimed the West had tried to turn Ukraine's people into cannon fodder. Military service will apply only to citizens who are in the reserve, especially those who have served in the armed forces, have certain military professions, and relevant experience, Putin said. Shortly after the president's announcement, the country's defense minister, Sergei Shoigu, said 300,000 Russians with previous military experience would be called up. According to the decree signed by Putin on Wednesday, the contracts of soldiers fighting in Ukraine will be extended until the end of the partial mobilization period.
Отслужил тех, кто имеет боевой опыт, тех, кто имеет военную специальность, у нас почти 25 миллионов.
The Ukrainian presidential advisor Mikhailo Podolyak said Putin's decision to announce a partial mobilization was a predictable step that highlights that the war was not going according to the Kremlin's plan. Putin's speech was swiftly condemned by Western leaders. Germany's vice-chancellor, Robert Habeck, said Russia's decision to announce a partial mobilization was another bad and wrong step from Russia. British Defense Secretary Ben Wallace said Putin's breaking of his own promises not to mobilize parts of the population and the illegal annexation of parts of Ukraine are an admission that his invasion is failing. Putin is making a very dangerous nuclear gamble and must stop such reckless behavior, warned European Commission spokesperson Peter Stano. Putin's decision to announce a partial mobilization sent shockwaves across Russia. Since the start of the invasion on the 24th of February, the Russian president has sought to shield his population from the grim realities of war, with the Kremlin eager to cultivate a sense of normality on the streets of Moscow and other major cities. But with the decision to announce a partial mobilization, and the call-up of 300,000 mostly young Russian men, the war will now enter the household of many families across the country.
Accuse the West of crossing a line by providing sophisticated weapons to Ukraine.
I'd like to remind you that our country also has various weapons of destruction, and in certain aspects even more modern weapons than NATO countries. If there's a threat to the territorial integrity of our country, in order to protect Russia and our people, we will certainly use all the means at our disposal. This is not a bluff.
The announcement has also triggered an apparent exodus of people unwilling to join the conflict. Many of these Russians arriving in Serbia are still fearful of speaking in opposition to the war.
I speak with you and I'm afraid because my government and police can see it and I will have problem in my country. But I want to say freedom for Ukraine. I want to, please somebody stop Putin.
Lithuania's defense minister Arvydas Anušauskas has said the country is to put its rapid reaction force on high alert, as the mobilization will also occur on its border with the Russian exclave of Kaliningrad. Latvia's Foreign Minister Edgars Rinkēvičs said the country will not offer refuge to any Russians fleeing Moscow's mobilization of troops. Putin also said Russia would give its full support to the referendums announced for this weekend in Luhansk, Donetsk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia to join the Russian Federation. He accused the West of starting a war against Russia in Ukraine in 2014. In its aggressive anti-Russian policy, the West has crossed all lines, the Russian president said. The proxy Russian authorities in 4 occupied areas of Ukraine had announced on Tuesday their intentions to hold referendums between 23 to 27th of September on joining the Russian Federation. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, speaking in a video address released early on Wednesday, said in relation to the referendums, "Our position does not change according to this noise or any other announcement." Kyiv said the sham referendums were meaningless and vowed to eliminate threats posed by Russia, saying its forces would keep retaking territory regardless of what Moscow or its proxies announced. Zelensky will speak to the UN General Assembly by video link on Wednesday. The White House rejected Russia's plans to hold the referendums, adding that Moscow may be making the move to recruit troops in those areas after suffering extensive losses on the battlefield. Jake Sullivan, President Joe Biden's national security advisor, called the referendums an affront to principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity. Several world leaders have said they will not recognize any referendums or new annexations of Ukrainian territory, with French President Emmanuel Macron calling the plan a parody. Any referendums on joining Russia in Russian-occupied Ukrainian territories would destroy any remaining window for talks between Kyiv and Moscow. Ukrainian publication Liga.net cited the Ukrainian president's office spokesman as saying on Tuesday, "Without the referendums, there is still the smallest chance for a diplomatic solution." After the referendums, no, Liga.net quoted Serhiy Nikiforov as saying, "With Germany's gas storage facilities at just over 90% capacity," Robert Habeck, the economy minister, said Germany stands a good chance of getting through the winter. Germany is ahead of its goal to have the subterranean stores 95% full by the start of November. The General Staff of Ukraine's armed forces said on Tuesday evening that its operations in Donetsk near the towns of Bakhmut and Avdiivka caused Russia to suffer significant losses. But Russian forces shelled those towns and dozens more in northeastern and southern Ukraine, the General Staff said. Police in Germany have raided several properties understood to belong to the Russian oligarch Alisher Usmanov, including his villa on Tegernsee Lake in the southern state of Bavaria, on suspicion of money laundering and violations of EU sanctions. U.S. senators on Tuesday proposed that Biden's administration use secondary sanctions on international banks to strengthen a price cap G7 countries plan to impose on Russian oil. Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen and Republican Pat Toomey announced a framework for legislation to impose the secondary sanctions, which would target financial institutions involved in trade finance, insurance, reinsurance, and brokerage of Russia oil and petroleum products sold at prices exceeding the cap. Reuters and Agence France Presse contributed to his report.